Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's baking blog. Today I'm going to be making a chocolate cake. Now this is going to be a chocolate sponge cake with a layer of raspberry jam and chocolate ganache in the middle, and then I'm going to put more ganache over the top, and then I'm going to glaze it. This is an experiment for a birthday cake that I have to make for one of my great nieces in a few weeks' time. So hopefully it will turn out well. It's quite a simple recipe, but there's a few steps involved. So for the sponge cake I have a different way of measuring things. I have 4 medium eggs, and for this recipe we weigh the eggs in the shell, and in my instance they came to 240 grams. And so with the shell, eggs in the shell at 240 grams, the other ingredients are also 240 grams. So 240 grams of softened butter, 240 grams of caster sugar, and if I was just making a plain sponge, it would be 240 grams of flour, plain flour. But because I'm making a chocolate one, I've got 180 grams of plain flour and 60 grams of cocoa powder. I also have 1 teaspoon of baking powder, which I'll put into the flour now, and I have a little bit of milk that I might need for later on. And then, just to tell you the other ingredients, but without, you know, just that we're going to use, I have double cream here, I have dark chocolate and gelatin powder, I have cocoa powder, and I have raspberry jam, but we'll use those later on. So the first thing I'm going to do is to cream the butter and the sugar together, and I have my oven preheating at 180 Celsius, that's 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit, and I've greased 2 8-inch cake tins with removable bases, and I've lined the bases with parchment paper as well. So the first thing to do is to cream the butter and the sugar until it's nice and fluffy. And my butter's already very soft because it's warm in here today. And with the butter creamed into the sugar, I'm going to add the eggs, and I've beaten these eggs, and I'm going to add them a little bit at a time and get them fully incorporated. Now if the mixture curdles, it doesn't matter because it will come back together as we fold in the other ingredients. Okay, so that's the eggs mixed into the butter and the sugar, and so the next thing to do is to sift in the flour, the cocoa powder and the baking powder. So I'm going to just give those a little bit of a mix around with a whisk just to get the baking powder mixed through a little bit. And then I'm going to sift that into the egg and butter mixture, and then we're going to fold that in. We don't want to over mix this. So with that sifted in, I'll just use my fingers to get the more lumpy bits broken down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fold that into the egg and butter mixture, and I have some milk so that if it's too stiff I can just loosen it a little bit, but I don't want to use too much milk. And I'm just going to put a little dash of milk in, probably no more than about a half a teaspoon, I think. And that's loosened it all up very nicely. So the next thing to do is to put that into our cake tins. And for that I'm actually going to weigh it so that I get it fairly evenly divided. So I've got 480 in there, and I think I should get about 480 in this one, if I've done my maths correctly. Maybe a couple of grams more. In fact, it's a couple of grams less. So I'm going to take 20 grams out of this one. Good. So we'll spread that evenly into the pan. And with that spread into the tins, I'm going to put those into the oven, and I'm going to bake them for between 20 and 25 minutes until they're nice and springy to the touch and a skewer poked into the centre comes out clean. Then I'm going to let them cool down. I'll take them out of the tin after about 5 minutes and let them cool down completely, and we'll go on to do the next steps. Our chocolate sponges have baked and they're cooling down, and I have them here. While they're cooling down, I'm going to make the ganache that can go inside and then cover the whole cake. And for that, I have 500 grams of dark chocolate, which I've roughly processed in my immersion blender in batches. So there's some chunks, but it's quite fine in the main. And I have 400 milliliters of double cream. I'm going to bring this double cream up just so that it's just about boiling, and then I'm going to pour it into the chocolate and mix it until it's melted. So I'll just heat the cream first. Okay, the cream is just about boiling, so I'm going to pour that into the chocolate. I'm going to just give it a quick stir around to get it distributed, and then I'm going to leave it to let the chocolate melt a little bit before we mix it completely. So I'll just leave that for a couple of minutes. So with that having melted quite nicely, I think I'm going to give that a good stir until everything is combined and it's nice and smooth. So that's our ganache, and it's nice and smooth, but as you can see it's quite runny. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that for it to cool down completely, and when it's cooled down completely I'm going to whisk it to a sort of fluffy consistency, and I'll chill it in the fridge, and then we're going to spread it onto our cake and form a nice coating as the filling, and then all the way around the outside, and then we'll be able to go on and make a glaze which will go over the top. So I'll be back when this is chilled and it's ready to go to the next step. The sponges are cooled and the ganache has cooled down as well, and that's firmed up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to whisk that briefly to lighten it up just a little bit, and then we'll get on and spread it. So I'm just going to use my hand mixer just to give this a bit of a whisk. It will lighten the colour a little bit as well, I think. I think that's enough. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spread some raspberry jam on the cake. Now this is a matter of taste, how much you spread on, and I think probably 3 or 4 tablespoons would be ample. Now that's about 4 dessert spoons, and that may actually be enough. Yes, it is going to be enough. And then what I'm going to do to make this easier is I'm going to spread the ganache on the other cake and then just place it on top. So I'll turn that one up. This will be the middle bit, and then I want to take my ganache that will be ample again. And push it towards the sides, but not quite all the way, because if we press down afterwards it will push it out to the side, and we're going to fill the sides anyway. And I think that will be good enough for that. And if we turn that over and place that on the top like that, I'll just wipe my hands. And I'm going to just scrape off any excess jam at this stage. And then I'm going to cover the sides and the top with more ganache. And that's actually about as much as I need to do at this stage. I'm just going to fill in a little bit here. And here. Now at that stage you could, if you wanted to, just let that set up, and then you could serve that as the cake and it would be ideal. But I'm going to make a glaze, so what I'm going to do is put this into the fridge for it to firm up while we make a glaze, and then I'll pour the glaze over the top and let that set as well. Okay, so for the glaze I have half a cup, which is 120 milliliters of double cream, and into that I'm going to put a quarter of a cup, 60 milliliters of water, and 1 cup, which is 200 grams of sugar, and 4 tablespoons, which is 20 grams of cocoa powder. And I'm going to give that a stir around, and then I'm going to heat that on the stove until it thickens, and it might take 15 to 20 minutes. And then I will need 7 grams of gelatin crystals, or 2 leaves of gelatin paper soaked in cold water for 5 minutes. But this way it's 7 grams of gelatin, and I'm going to use 1/4 cup, 60 milliliters of boiling water to dissolve that, but I don't do that at this stage. So I'll heat this until it thickens, and then I'll come back. So our cocoa mixture with the cream has boiled, and it's started to thicken, so I'm going to put 60 milliliters of boiling water into that little dish, and I'm going to sprinkle my gelatine on the top like that, and then I'm going to whisk that around. Until I can see that that's dissolving nicely. And then I'm going to pour my cocoa mixture into a jug. Like that, and I'm going to pour the gelatine into it and to scrape any excess off. And I'm going to whisk that until I'm sure that all the gelatine is dissolved. Oh, I can see I've splashed myself with chocolate. And I'm going to leave that to cool down to about 26 degrees Celsius, which is 80 Fahrenheit. And that's going to be the pouring consistency. By that time, my ganache coating should have set firm enough just to accept that glaze. So I'll be back with you when it's ready to pour. So our glaze has cooled down now, and it's just about 26 degrees Celsius, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to pour it over the top, and try to get it to coat the sides. Okay, so I've glazed the cake and it was runny, so I've cleaned up a little bit and put it onto a plate. And now I'm going to leave it to set. So that's going to be it for this recipe, because it's going to take a while to set, and I'm not going to cut it today. So I hope you've enjoyed the recipe, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for this recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well. And I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future, so until then, happy baking.